A surprising amount of that game is dedicated to making giant chickens have sex with each other, and that is just the way it is.
Well, this is the way to get me in.
Unless Sheri and me have written fan fiction that you've read, you can't play the games. It's not fair.
I read the books!
I'm not saying I've never, said I've read the books, but
This is seriously the only show that gathers three of the best tech and gaming journalists from all over the internet to argue the most contentious topics for your amusement. If you like that, you can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts. Please do leave us a rating. We very much appreciate your support. This week, we're chatting all about video games and whether or not remakes and remasters are good or bad for the industry. And this week, I am joined by Editor-in-Chief of Laptop Mag, Sheri L Smith, video producer at GamesRadar, Tom Farthing, and senior editor at Tom's Guide, Marshall Honorof. You will each have 20 seconds to lay out your initial argument. And Tom, I think I'm going to come to you first. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Fantastic stuff. Your 20 seconds starts now.
Okay, so I think remakes are a good thing at making a boatload of cash for no work. So I think that they're just trying to squeeze a cash cow dry, and I think that Breath of the Wild is a perfect example of something that you can take something that has the soul of Ocarina of Time and then remake it and add new ideas, and it can still be the best game we've ever played. I think the industry needs to stop being lazy and just grabbing for money, and I think that we need more new IPs and more new ideas.
Well, I was worried everybody was going to kind of sit on the fence on this one. I'm glad you're not, Tom. You have a very strong opinion on it. Marshall, I'm coming to you next then. Your 20 seconds starts now.
At the risk of sitting on the fence, I am of two minds about remakes. I think that because we have a problem with game preservation, they can be useful for new players. At the same time, I don't like the idea of players paying for the privilege of playing something they've already played again.
Fantastic stuff. And then Sheri, finally coming to you then. What do you think of video game remakes? Are they good or bad for the industry?
I don't have a problem with them, especially like there are certain games I want to play on each console generation, so keep them looking pretty. I will keep giving you my money, and we can all be happy. And it introduces a new generation to the games of old that I love, so bring them on.
Wow. Well, you want to play the same game on every generation, Tom. I'm going to have to throw that to you. Last of Us is a game that looks like you're going to be able to do that with. Rumors are coming out that they're working on a PlayStation 5 remaster of The Last of Us. Obviously, it originally came out on the PS3, then came to PS4 remastered. Is that a little bit crazy for us to get the same game on each generation going forward?
Yeah, because you can play it on the PS5. You just played the PS4 version on the PS5. Like, I don't understand what the issue... And, like, I guarantee you that there are going to be modders out there that have made a modded version, if you want to play it on Steam, that have increased graphics. And it's like, okay, right, fine. I will concede to the argument if you really want PS4 graphics for the PS5 graphics for The Last of Us, really getting you into that world, then play The Last of Us 2. That's what that is. Job done.
Sheri, I'm going to have to throw it back to you. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I do. While I support remakes, I think there a couple of years should go by before we start making remakes. I think it's a little too early for The Last of Us. Let it get a little grungy looking, like, oh God, it looks like you can barely see Ellie's whatever. Like, let's get this prettied up. I think it's just a bit too soon for Last of Us, especially since you can play PS4 games on PS5.
Should we decide right now, Marshall? You're going to have to be in between here. How many years? We're going for okay, we need a certain amount of years. Are we talking 5, 10, 15 years?
Yeah, it's incredible because this is something that Matt and I were just talking about yesterday, and I was trying to think of the perfect number of years before you can remaster something and not get anyone mad. But I think that The Last of Us is a great example because, like you said, you can play the remastered version on PS4, on PS5. I think you can even run it at 4K. I think you can even run it at 60 frames per second. I don't understand what good a remake would do, but that's because you can play it on the PS4, because you can play it on the PS5. If this were still a PS3 exclusive, if you were just getting into the series for the first time, you shouldn't have to go and buy a PS3 to do it. If you can't get a game on a modern system, then there's some merit to a remake.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation, right? Recently, we've had Sony kind of come out and say, hey, we're going to shut down the PS Vita and PS3 stores. And then backtrack on that almost immediately. Sheri, this point of sort of games preservation, how important is that, do you think?
I think it's really important. There are games that are being preserved in the Library of Congress, for God's sake. Especially games that like are after a while they get taken offline. Like there needs to be some way to interact with those games. Like just because Sony or Xbox or whoever is supposed to be maintaining them are like, well, it's not profitable for us to maintain. Doesn't mean that my enjoyment of said media should be cut off. Like there needs to be a way for those to live in perpetuity.
Interesting stuff. You know, we've kept sort of talking about the idea of a cash grab, right? Is this just a cash grab? And the thing with The Last of Us is it's a franchise now that is expanding beyond video games, right? The movie is coming out. So if the remastered version was to come out on PS5 alongside the movie, does that just make this seem like even more of a cash grab to you, Tom?
Yeah, and I think we're kind of like, as gamers, none of us are multimillionaires. I think Shri might be because she's just buying everything. But it's that thing where we're justifying doing it when we buy these remasters and these remakes, and especially with the movie coming out. Yeah, I would feel that we're justifying their reason. Whereas I would want to see Last of Us Part 3. There are amazing characters that didn't get their head smashed in the last game that I'd like to see further. Whereas in their money is going to be going into this remake instead of pushing it into The Last of Us Part 3. And it's because they know it's cheap, easy, and efficient. And we're just justifying it. Every time we buy a remaster or remake, we're justifying them doing that.
So, Tom, that may be true, but I have a question for you, and this is something I think about often when it comes to remakes, which is it's great for us to say, I've played The Last of Us, I played The Last of Us 2, where's The Last of Us 3? When that movie or when that TV series comes out, you're going to have a whole lot of fans jumping on for the first time who have never played the game before. And, my take is always that it's great when someone wants to get into a new series. I don't want to gatekeep slightly older games and say, oh, well, you weren't a true fan if you didn't get on board when it first came out.
I read the books.
I'm not saying I've never, said I've read the books, but what are you going to say to new fans who jump on with the movie? Are you going to say, go track down the old PS4 remastered version, or here is a brand new PS5 game that's going to tell you everything you need to know?
I think I'm with Shuri. Unless Shuri and me have written fan fiction that you've read, you can't play the games. It's not fair.
On one hand, like the idea of sending new gamers on a quest to find old consoles sits with me like Lord of the Rings styles, like Fellowship of the Console. I don't know what it would be called, but on the other hand, I do agree with the gatekeeping. Like I want as many people as possible to experience all the joys of gaming that I've gotten over the decades. So like if this is a way to make it easier for that to happen, then I'm with it. But like part of me is like, no, you must find an the old console. You must find an RF switch and a TV to play it, or maybe a split.
Have you ever blown a cartridge? Then get out.
I say this having spent the entire weekend on eBay looking for old Game Boy Advance cartridges. So,
Game Boy.
So one thing, granted, this is one example that you can take out of context, but take Bloodborne or Souls games. A huge part of that fan base was this thing of like, they're hard to play. They don't tell you anything about the story or even how to play the game. And graphically, they're better now, but they used to be just dark corners would hide a lot of the issues. And so there is that argument of like, with Souls players would say, no, you have to play it in its original form because that's how it was intended. And so part of this experience of blowing on the cartridge, finding our games, the controls not being as good, that's, I would argue, maybe even part of the experience of these old games. They shouldn't be remade to be easier because that wasn't the experience. These tribulations and trials are part of loving that game.
It's an interesting point, and I think one of the games that's come out recently to massive critical acclaim and fan acclaim is Final Fantasy VII, right? A game that has been talked about for decades at this point, but wasn't the easiest thing to go back and play the original. But of course, the remake, it's difficult to call it a remake. It's so vastly different from the original. So, Marshall, I'm curious your thoughts on this. Not the same game, exactly.
Well, it's not the same game. It's it strains the definition of a remake. It's a reimagining or a reworking. I know that remake, remaster, reimagining, all these things tend to blend together after a while.
Yeah.
I loved the Final Fantasy VII remake, and part of the reason why I loved it is because I was very skeptical of it before it came out. I said, if they're going to remake Final Fantasy VII, what can they do except give it better graphics? And if it's a good game, which it is, better graphics are nice, but it's not going to change the experience. But then they went and redid the entire story and also rewarded people who played the original game by kind of subverting some of those story points and trying to build on it. On the one hand, it's exactly the right way to do a remake because it's something totally different. On the other hand, it's completely the wrong way to do a remake because it's not introducing fans to this wonderful game that they've never played before.
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? I'm in that boat, right? I never played the original Final Fantasy VII, and I jump into Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'll be honest, it's not clicking with me. It's not really my sort of game. But knowing that it subverts the original so hard, I'm thinking, like, I'm playing through it and going, should I just go back and play the original? Like, is this making me want to play the original more or less? I'm so confused the entire time. And I guess that's kind of the point, right? Sheri, I'm wondering what you think. We've talked
Well,
about.
first of all,
Sorry,
you
go on.
hurt me with your idea that you are not into the remake. Like, this is the gift that I didn't even know. I was in the boat with Marshall. Like, I did not want this. Do not mess with my memories of my childhood. I cannot tell you how many hundreds of hours I spent grinding in those woods. In the Wutai prophets with the Ragnarok sword with my 3 main materia and trying to clone those out, Knights of the Round, Duplicate, and Cure-All. I cannot tell you how many times, and it's sad, but it hurts me that you didn't like this game. This is what I didn't know I wanted nor needed. So I love this game. And absolutely, you should try to play the first one. Isn't it out on mobile or Steam? Like, absolutely, you need to know the joys of chocobo breeding. You need to understand it. You need to play that mini game where, like, it's basically like Risk, and you're like maneuvering soldiers, and you need to figure out who are you going to take to on a date. Are you taking Tifa? Are you taking Aerith? So all of these reasons, you absolutely need to play both of them. But in terms of the remake, I am pleasantly surprised what Square Enix pulled out of its butt, because I was, oh, my pen was sharp to tear that remake to shreds, and I could not. I am so like, I don't care if they cut it into 30-minute segments and they charge $30 per segment. Square Enix is going to get all my money for
Do you
this
want
game. It is just
do you want a
damn good.
standalone chocobo breeding game? The whole game is just you in a ranch. That's the whole.
I wouldn't be mad at it.
I feel I have to point this out, Matt. If you've never played the original, a surprising amount of that game is dedicated to making giant chickens have sex with each other, and that is just the way it is.
Well, this is the way to get me in.
You got to get the right greens. You got to make sure that you breed the right birds to get the right color. Then you got to race them a little bit, man.
Looking forward to chicken breeding in 4K, 60 frames per second.
This summer, integrate.
Yeah.
I can't wait. I'm back in. All of a sudden, I'm back in. It's interesting one though, right? Because we keep coming back to this conversation around cash grabs. Is it a cash grab? And we've said, or Tom, you said, Final Fantasy VII Remake is not a remake of a Final Fantasy VII game, right? Is this the biggest cash grab going? They're splitting this game into who knows how many parts over so many years. They're going to charge you $70 for each single part of this remake of a game. Is that just the biggest cash grab going?
I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of halfway. Halfway isn't it? It actually proves my point in the sense of without making a remake, they're making a whole brand new game, and it's this thing where like they've put storyline parts in that weren't there before, and they pulled stuff in. So it's this thing where like they've done kind of what I want to do, which is reinvent stuff and add new things in. So it is and it isn't. I'm really confused about Final Fantasy because I loved it and I loved the original, but this isn't Final Fantasy VII.
It's an interesting one, right? I'm sure there are plenty of people arguing in the comments right now about whether or not it is a remake, whether or not it is a cash grab. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Marshall, I want to come to you then. Is there a game from the past that you think hasn't got the love it deserves, that you think should be remastered and shown a new audience and maybe would thrive right now in this much more mainstream gaming market?
So, to Tom's point earlier, you had said that Breath of the Wild was basically the original Legend of Zelda, but made for a new generation. And yet, I kind of wonder how people might respond if you did a full remake of The Legend of Zelda, even if it was just in the SNES Link to the Past style, which I think they had in Japan, but we've never really seen that. Or if you did it in 3D. My heart of hearts says I would love a remake, or at least a remaster, of the Shadow Heart series. That did not get enough love the first time around. I'm getting some blank stares.
Yeah, exactly. Blank stares all around, I think. Shadow Hearts, tell us a little bit about it. What's it like?
So this was a JRPG for the PS2, and I guess just got drowned in the deluge of PS2 JRPGs. That instead of taking place in a high fantasy world about a group of plucky young friends who want to save the world, it's body horror, Lovecraftian horror. It takes place in the real world, late 19th, early 20th century. There's some World War I stuff going on in Europe, in Japan, and you're fighting against this sort of yes, this JRPG person who wishes to become a god and all that stuff,
Classic.
but he wants to do it through Christian mythology, and that's sort of
It's a Xenosaga?
it's it's like a less sci-fi, much scarier version of Xenosaga. And the first
I'm
game,
with
Kudelka, takes place entirely in this isolated Irish monastery, and
Well, you've certainly given me a challenge this week to go find B-roll of that to insert into the video.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
good
to
luck.
filling in all that.
Good luck.
Exactly. But Sheri, it seemed like all of those things that Marshall was listing off piqued your interest. He's got your $70 pre-order, I think.
I play this. Like I'm with this. Like and, things that I would like to see remade. Oh, so many things. Let's start with those deep cuts. Let's go with Rival Schools, one of the first fighting games I played on PS1. I would like to revisit that. Bushido Blade. I would also Ubisoft. Where the hell is my Splinter Cell? Where is it? Where is my Prince of Persia? Fix it.
Fix it.
Reboot it, fix it. Do something Square Enix is doing with Final Fantasy, but get on it. Like I've given you far too much money for Far Cry, Division 2, and the like, for you not to give me the things that I asked for. Plus whatever Assassin's Creed that you put out. Now it's time for you to give back, Ubisoft. Give me the things that I want. Capcom. Give me on a mission. I can't even remember who made Tenchu Stealth Assassins. That needs to have a comeback. And for God's sake, bring back Siphon Filter.
Well, you certainly went some deep cuts there. Tom, I want to go back to something Sheri was on about by Ubisoft, right? Splinter Cell and Prince of Persia Sands of Time. We know that there's a Prince of Persia Sands of Time remake in the works, and it didn't get the best reception when the trailer came out. Splinter Cell is one of those franchises that people keep talking about, keep expecting a new trailer. Do you want to see those games remade, or do you just want to see sequels, new versions of those games come out, and should they just put the time and effort there instead?
I think Sheri was right when she just said, instead of specifically one game, she just said remake Ubisoft. I think we should just redo Ubisoft and like reboot Ubisoft. And then hopefully out of that, we'll get a bunch of other stuff. But no, I think that's the thing. Like Sheri said as well, like Prince of Persia: Sands of Time has amazing ideas. And it's this thing where I don't want to see a remake. They've got so many original ideas in Splinter Cell and Siphon Filter that you can take and put into a brand new game. Why are you not doing that? Nobody else has taken the stuff from Prince of Persia. I'm waiting for somebody just to rip it off, because you might as well. They're just mechanics. So yeah, I just think that stop giving me a reskin of an old game that I've already played. Give me something brand new that you already have a base for, that you know I'll snap up. Like Sheri's so passionate. It's just like, give me something, I will buy it. And I think that you'll get more people buying it if it's new rather than just a graphical reskin.
And speaking of which, bad remakes, I was not fond of that Ratchet of Clank remake a few years ago. I did not need them to do that and try to reskin it to fit the movie. Don't do that.
I think I would have been happier with it had the movie been better.
Nah.
I mean,
That's
look,
a fair point.
it has the benefit of being one of 2 or 3 movie video game tie-ins that's better than the movie it's tying into. That and Wolverine Origins, and I'm struggling to think of other ones.
Yeah. But one of the things that I like, for example, I'll give Streets of Rage as an example. Streets of Rage 4 is a brand new game, freaking amazing, having all the characters and you see them progress. But then they go, look, if you want to have a bit of fun, here's a graphical overlay of what it used to look like. That is the perfect example. And it wasn't that expensive either. And it follows through and they got DLC. That is exactly what you need to be doing. Not kind of doing a Master Chief collection where it's like, oh, we just bundle them all, put new graphical elements and you can see. It's like, there's no new content here. I know the sniping positions to get that grunt. Like, it's just like, and then, it just absolutely does my head in when they take these older games like Turok, Bionic Commando and GoldenEye and completely mess up trying to even reskin them or do something new. They're just, terrible. Do something new, please.
So, Tom, I want to press you on this a little bit because it's something that I don't have a great answer for, but you might. You're saying Streets of Rage 4 is a great example. We should have these uh, old ideas in new games. And for the most part, I'm in total agreement. And Sheri, we were just talking about Ratchet and Clank. There is going to be a new Ratchet and Clank later this year. What do you say to people who, in a story-driven series like Ratchet and Clank, brand new game, great.
Yeah,
How do you catch up on it? Streets of Rage is not really a story-driven series. It's not so important to go back and play the older
that's
entries.
true.
But what do you do when people are just coming into the series for the first time? I know we talked about this earlier. You don't want to go on the console quest, but where's that happy medium between trying to introduce new fans and giving us something new?
I would suggest a Witcher 3 type of approach to it. Like you can play through quick recaps, make your decisions, see the main beats of the game. Like you've got to see the plumber in his massive crack. You got to know about the nefarious. You've got to know about the Clegg being the timekeeper and all these things. And you get those in real quick beats, and then you jump into the game.
So I admire your optimism, but do you actually think any company, like, do you remember when that happened in The Witcher? Everyone went, oh my God, like, that's such a genius idea. And then we've never seen it since. Like, it's a great idea, but you'll never get it. I think that they can drop bits into it. I think with Ratchet and Clank, at the end of the day, you kind of know what's going on. There's an element where it's like storyline is important, gameplay is better. And I'd always argue that, like, gameplay at the end of the day, I don't really need to know what's going on in Bloodborne. I keep bringing up Souls games because I've been addicted to them recently. But you don't really know what's going on with a lot of it. But that doesn't matter if the game is good enough. So I would argue if you've made a new entry into the series that is from an older series that people are fond of, new players, if it reviews well enough and is a good enough game in its own right without, it doesn't need all of this story holding up, you shouldn't need to know the previous entries. And then that's what we're here for. That's what Wikipedia's here for. So my argument would be the game should be able to stand on its own legs without that.
It's definitely an interesting point. And before we close out, then I want to touch on something that's happening as you're watching this. The Mass Effect Legendary Edition launched just a few days ago. And it's one of those games where, yes, Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 are very easy to play. They're all on Game Pass. They all run on the next generation of Xbox consoles. So why are we seeing this remaster? Is it just an easy way to turn around a quick game so that we're more hyped? Well, there we go. Tom said it all. Is it just an easy way to turn around a quick game so that we're all hyped for the next Mass Effect installment? Is that a good enough excuse? What do we think, Marshall?
I don't want to be cynical about Mass Effect because I really do like that series, but I saw the kind of reactions on social media when it was first announced, and people acted like BioWare was doing them a huge favor, and they acted like BioWare was giving them exactly what they wanted. They waited so long for this, and I'm thinking to myself, the series is, for the most part, less than 10 years old. You just played it. I know that a lot of you have replayed it again and again since then. It's all available backwards compatible. It's all available on Game Pass. You can already boost all these settings on PC. What has BioWare done here that's such a huge favor to gamers? I was playing some of it last night. It's fun. I love the graphical upgrades. I still love the game. All the good stuff is still there. But this feeling of gratitude that we're supposed to have to these companies selling us the same thing again is always confusing to me.
Sheri, agree or disagree? What do we think?
I weep for Andromeda. Like, I weep for Andromeda in the game that could have been. I think that, like, with this latest cash grab, I'm hoping that BioWare is going to take that money and work on A, improving Andromeda, and B, furthering that story, because we do need to go into other galaxies. Like, I love my femme shep. She's my favorite girl next to my mama, and I always love my mama. But this is a time to literally take from Star Trek and boldly go somewhere else.
Tom, finally coming to you then. I think I already know what you're going to say, but are you going to be picking up the Mass Effect Legendary Edition?
First of all, I love the mental image of Cherie's mantelpiece has got a picture of her mum and Femme Shep on it. Or like kissing the night. I just love that. Right, so I think there's two things. There's two options here. Either BioWare wanted to give fans next generational graphics for the sex scenes, or they wanted to basically repair the relationship that Andromeda did and get people hyped for Mass Effect 4, which we know is coming out. We've seen trailers. There's loads of teasers and links coming out. So I'm very, very convinced that there's going to be a hidden trailer Easter egg at the end of Mass Effect 3 when you've platinumed all of them or something ridiculous, where it just gives you another trailer. And they're basically going, hey, sorry we missed up Andromeda. Like, hey, like you say, like, be thankful that we've given you this. And also remember, the fourth one's coming that hopefully we won't mess up. That's all I think it is. I think it's a relationship rebuilding exercise to remind people to spend money on Mass Effect 4 in a year, 2, 3.
Well, it's definitely an interesting one. Please do let us know down in the comments below what you think of video game remasters. Are you excited for the Mass Effect Legendary Edition? Are you going to be picking it up? Or is it just a massive cash grab and you'd rather teams be working on brand new games? I'm genuinely intrigued to hear what you guys have to say about this one. Thank you to all of my panelists for joining me today. This has been Seriously. You can find it on YouTube and Facebook and podcast services like Spotify and iTunes. Please do go give us all good ratings. Very much appreciate all of that. And we will see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.